So you want to own a supercar someday, right? Maybe it's a Ferrari, Lamborghini, McLaren, whatever your dream car is. But here's the thing. Buying one is only part of it. Actually being able to comfortably own one is a completely different story. And I feel like social media makes this look way easier than it actually is. You know, you see those delivery videos, people picking up their dream cars. You see the cars sitting in these crazy garages. What you don't see as much is everything that comes after that. Insurance, maintenance, depreciation, random repairs, and of course, whether you should pay cash or finance it. So I figured I'd give you my perspective as someone who actually owns these cars, what I've learned, and what I think you should really consider before buying one. And just to be clear, I'm definitely not a financial advisor. This is just how I personally look at it. And real quick, if you're into this kind of stuff, actual supercar ownership, what these cars really cost, the good, the bad, and all the stuff that you don't normally hear about, consider subscribing. Alright, let's get into it. So let's say you've been looking at a $300,000 supercar, and somehow after staring at listings every night for 6 months, you've convinced yourself, okay, well I can afford this. We've all been there. But that $300,000 price tag isn't really the number. You've got sales tax, registration, insurance, and then you buy the car and immediately start finding things you apparently need. PPF, tint, ceramic coating, maybe wheels and exhaust, lowering springs, and somehow your $300,000 car has needed another 15 to 20 grand worth of stuff in the first month. And keep in mind, that's all before anything actually goes wrong. Now let's get into one that's probably going to start a war in the comments: cash or financing. I know people have very strong opinions about this. Some people will tell you that if you can't pay cash for a supercar, you shouldn't own one. Other people will tell you paying cash for a depreciating asset makes absolutely no sense. I think both sides can be right, but there's a huge difference between choosing to finance a car and having to finance the car. Maybe you have the cash, but you'd rather keep that money invested. Maybe it's in your business. Maybe you just don't want $300,000 tied up in a car. I completely understand that. Where I think it gets really dangerous is when you're stretching just to get into the car. You scrape together the down payment, the bank says yes, and suddenly you're thinking, well, I guess I can afford it. Not necessarily. The bank approving you and you actually being comfortable owning the car are two completely different things. And this is where I think people can really get themselves into trouble. The monthly payment, because you stop looking at it as a $300,000 car. Now it's only $3,800 a month, or whatever that number ends up being. And mentally, that feels completely different. But you're still buying a $300,000 car. And here's the question I think people forget to ask. So what happens if you want out? Let's say 6 months from now, you decide you want something else, which if you're a car person, let's be real, that's totally possible. Or maybe your financial situation changes. Maybe the market changes. Maybe that car you thought was gonna hold its value suddenly isn't. Now the dealer tells you your car is worth only 250 grand and you owe 275,000. That's a problem, right? Especially with supercars, because a 10% move isn't a few $1,000. On a $300,000 car, that's 30 grand. And that can happen without anything actually being wrong with the car. And depreciation is probably the strangest expense with these cars because you don't actually see it happening. Now you get a $2,000 service bill and you're like, well, $2,000. Meanwhile, your car might have lost 25 grand in value over the last year and nobody mailed you a bill for that. So you don't think about it the same way. Obviously, some cars hold their value better than others. Certain Ferraris, certain Lambos, GT Porsches, limited production cars. Sometimes you could even get lucky and make money. But personally, I would never buy one of these assuming that's gonna happen. If the car goes up, awesome. If it holds value, even better. But I go into it knowing it's a car. It can go down, and sometimes it can go down a lot. So if your entire plan only works if the car holds its value, I'd probably rethink the plan. This might sound weird, but regular maintenance isn't really what worries me with modern supercars. You can plan for that. You know there's going to be an annual service. You're eventually going to need tires. Brakes aren't going to last forever. That's part of owning the car. It's really the random stuff that gets you. You hit something and damage carbon fiber. A sensor decides it's done with life. You bend a wheel, get a nail in a tire. Something starts making a noise that definitely wasn't making that noise yesterday. And suddenly you're doing that thing every car person does. Turning the radio down. What is that? Then you turn it back up, still hear it. That's the stuff you need to be prepared for, because on a normal car, a weird noise might mean a few $100s. On one of these, you really don't want to know. And I think having some money set aside for the unexpected stuff makes owning these cars a lot less stressful. And this is exactly why I'm big on warranty coverage, especially if you're buying used. Before I buy one of these cars, I want to know how much factory warranty is left. Can I extend it? What's actually covered? What's the service history look like? Has the car had any weird issues? Because sometimes the cheapest car online isn't actually the best deal. So you find two cars, one is $10,000 $10,000 cheaper, and suddenly it looks like the obvious choice, but maybe the other one has better history, better warranty coverage, better maintenance records, and needs absolutely nothing. Honestly, I'd rather spend a little more upfront on the right car than save some money and immediately inherit somebody else's headache. And when you're talking about a Ferrari, Lambo, or McLaren, that headache can get expensive really fast. And this one sounds really obvious, but get an insurance quote before you buy the car, preferably on the actual VIN. Don't buy the car and then figure you'll deal with the insurance later, because depending on where you live, your age, driving history, how much you drive, how the car is stored, and the actual car itself, the numbers can be all over the place. And don't assume because your current sports car costs X amount that the supercar you're buying is only going to be a little bit more. I'd say find out. It's one phone call, and that's a number I definitely want to know before signing anything. Now, this is probably the question everyone actually wants answered. How much do I need to make to afford a supercar? And I know people want a number. $250,000 a year, $500,000, $1 million? I really don't think it works like that. Someone making $500,000 a year could spend every dollar they make. Big house, multiple cars, credit cards, loans, whatever. Another person could make less, have very little debt, have money invested, and have a lot more flexibility. So I don't really look at it as you need to make X dollars to own a Ferrari. I think it's more about what the car represents in your overall financial life. If buying a $300,000 car basically wipes you out, I don't care how much money you make. That's probably not comfortable, because now every repair matters, every market drop matters, every unexpected expense matters, and at that point, are you even enjoying the car? And this is probably the part I would have wanted somebody to tell me years ago. If owning one of these is your dream, don't make the Ferrari the goal. Make getting yourself into the financial position where buying the Ferrari isn't a big deal the actual goal. Build your career, build a business, invest, save, whatever your path is. And this doesn't happen overnight. And I think social media has really messed with people's perception of that. You open up Instagram and there's some 25-year-old standing next to a Lambo. And it's so easy to look at it and think, what am I doing wrong? Nothing. You have absolutely no idea what's going on behind that picture. Maybe they own it, maybe the bank owns most of it, maybe they rented it, maybe they're doing incredibly well. Who knows? And honestly, who cares? Everybody has a different path. Personally, I didn't wake up one morning and suddenly have a garage with these cars in it. It took a lot of time, and there were plenty of years where buying something like this would have absolutely made no sense for me. I think that's the part social media skips. You see the result, you don't see everything that happened before it. So when are you ready? For me, I think it comes down to a few pretty simple questions. Can you buy the car without draining everything you've worked for? If something breaks tomorrow, are you okay? If the car loses $30,000 in value, does that completely change your financial situation? If you finance it, are you comfortable with the payment even if something changes with your income? Could you get out of the car if you needed to? And most importantly, is owning the car going to make your life more stressful? Because these cars are supposed to be fun. And to be honest, nobody needs a Ferrari, no one needs a Lambo. They're ridiculous. That's kind of the whole point. But if you're scared to drive it because you're worried about miles, scared something is going to break, constantly checking what your car is worth, or constantly thinking about the payment, I feel that takes away a lot of what makes owning one special. The goal isn't just about being able to put one in your garage. It's being able to actually enjoy having it there. So that's really how I look at supercar ownership. Being able to buy one and being able to afford one aren't necessarily the same thing. And getting to the point where you can actually enjoy the car without constantly thinking about what it's costing you, that's the real goal. But I'm curious what you guys think, because I know this one is going to be divided. Are you paying cash, or are you financing it even if you have the cash? Let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this one, hit subscribe. I've got a lot more real-world Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Porsche ownership content coming. And I think the next one we need to tackle is cash versus financing a supercar, because there's definitely a lot more to unpack there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.